Good evening and welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Heschel?
Present.
Szilagyi?
Present. Or here.
Harlan? Here. Evans?
Here.
Garner?
Here.
Herzog?
Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. And tonight we have two students from Carl Traeger Middle School who are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Elena Peterson and Logan Valdez. So I'll invite them to come forward at this time.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Because schools and school districts exist for students, it's really important for us to have students at our meetings. And we're especially grateful to Logan and to Elena tonight for joining us, and to their moms for bringing them. So Logan, thank you very much for coming and sharing your time and the pledge. And Elena, thank you to you as well. We really appreciate you coming out. So you all have a good night, and if you want to stay for the meeting, you're welcome to do that. But if you have other pressing things to do, we understand that. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda are board and administrative reports. I have a very short board president's report. I just want to thank the community students at Oshkosh North High School and their teachers, Mr. Lieb, Mr. Weber, Mrs. Lieb, and Mrs. Gauthier, for inviting me to interact with them this week at two outdoor activities where social distancing and masking were evident. So I appreciate their efforts to provide learning experiences and to use the outside in this great weather that we've been experiencing. I also want to extend a sincere thank you to our district staff. We all know that we live in stressful and challenging times, and they have worked very hard to ensure that our students and staff have been in our buildings safely for about 3 weeks. And also they've been working very hard to make sure that our students are benefiting from meaningful virtual learning. So again, I want to thank our district staff for all their efforts to make sure that our students have been able to be in our buildings and to make sure that learning is meaningful. I also want to extend a sincere thank you to our students and our parents for working with the district as we seek to work together in the best interests of all of our students. As I said, these are very challenging and trying times. Working together, though, we can make a positive difference in the lives of all of our students. So again, I thank our staff, our students, and our parents as we strive to work together to make the best of this situation. With that, I'm going to turn the agenda over to Dr. Cartwright for the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog. So, very first, we are going to start with Carl Traeger Elementary School. Over at Carl Traeger Elementary School, students are growing their reading stamina. Students recently found a comfortable spot to read to self while reading with a goal in mind. 2 students in the Academy for Global Studies at Oshkosh West High School recently created a nonpartisan youth voter initiative in Wisconsin. Their efforts to empower students to become educated voters was recently spotlighted by one of our news stations. Students in the Communities program at Oshkosh North High School participated in the 9/11 National Day of Service, uniting to turn this day of tragedy into a day of service. Several partnerships were created with local organizations, and students helped by beautifying and cleaning up properties. Our district was recently awarded a $375,000 school safety grant through the Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. The federal funding will be used to enhance safety measures and safety equipment within the district learning facilities. We appreciate this grant, which will help us to enrich and expand our existing safety protocols. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to share a few district updates and important information with our families and community. The district will continue to provide free school meals to all students, as well as any child 18 and younger, while we are in virtual learning. School meals can be picked up on Mondays and Thursdays at all 4 Oshkosh Area School District school sites listed on the screen. We want to remind all families that this free benefit is available to all, and that taking or picking up school meals for your own children does not mean that other children will go hungry. We have meals available for every child, regardless of financial need. We are committed to continue to provide updates related to the Oshkosh Area School District E-Academy program. At this point in time, our parents should be able to see that the pacing have been adjusted. So that means that they be able to see our adjusted lesson and curriculum pacing guides now are currently in place. We've also have implemented what we call synchronous or class time learning. For last week, we started with morning meetings and language arts. For this week, we are adding in math. So they now have morning meetings, language arts, and math. Effective next week, we will have morning meetings, language arts, math, science, and social studies. In addition to this, the middle school E-Academy student coach to be hired, pending tonight's approval from y'all, will provide supports for students in organizing and managing 6 to 7 100% virtual courses. Middle school electives started this week in Canvas, and that would include music, art, Phi-Ed, and family consumer science. And we also included for everyone just a quote from one of our parents about the experience that they are having right now with the E-Academy program. And lastly, on the screen, you will see just a few examples of where I've been spending my time lately. Continuing with a lot of meetings, going out and having the opportunity to be in multiple schools, and also participating in many of our referendum presentations across the district. Without further ado, I will turn this back over. Actually, we do have district administrators' supplemental reports. I would ask for Dr. Gunlock to come forward in order to provide us with an update related to our referendum.
Good evening, everybody. This has been a very busy week for our referendum and communication efforts. We've started our watch parties, which are informational presentations that occur at each of our schools. So there's been several of those this week. Some of this, just sort of a breakdown of the schedule. On September 14th, we had a presentation to the neighborhood associations, so we got an opportunity to talk with them. We also got an opportunity to ask them, hopefully, for another meeting that we could have with them and get some of their input on if they would be willing to provide their thoughts and advisement to you as the school board in terms of what to do with facilities that we will no longer be using. The example here is Washington. We felt it, and they seem to be very receptive to the idea of us asking them, okay, what would you like to see happen with a site like that? Because Washington, is not the first, and it won't be the last facility through the consolidation plan. September 15th was Washington's watch party. That went very well. September 16th, we presented to Go EDC in person. September 16th, there were watch parties at North High, Webster Elementary, Traeger Middle School, and the SOS group. September 17th, we presented to the citywide PTO on the referendum. The 21st, we presented to the Noon Rotary. The 21st also had watch parties at West High, Lakeside Elementary, Oakwood Elementary, and Traeger Elementary. The 22nd, there were watch parties at Merrill, Shapiro, Tipler, Oaklawn, and Jefferson, and both Merrills, actually. Tonight, there is a watch party at Reed. Tomorrow, there is a watch party at Webster Middle School. These are in the evenings. And what is a watch party? Essentially what it is they see a video presentation of the referendum, all the factual information, and then there's some information if you would like to get involved, how to get involved, how to appropriately get involved, and then we open it up for questions and answers. We've gotten some really good questions, and just like all of our referendum presentations in the past, we always end up with several gold nuggets from the people we present to. Either they're things that we never thought of, or things that we need to explain better, questions that we weren't really anticipating. It really does work out well. So we're really happy to have those. Just looking to the future, September 29th, October 1st, those are our two in-person presentations. The 29th will be at the Carl Traeger Cafetorium. Both of these are at 6 p.m. And on October 1st, 2 days later, we'll be presenting at the Webster Auditorium. There's also the following Tuesday, which would be October 6th, a virtual presentation that will do the same thing. So if people are interested, they can either come out. If they're not comfortable doing that, obviously we'll all be wearing masks. We'll be spreading out in the cafetorium, as safely as possible. If they're not comfortable with that, we have a virtual one on October 6th. So those are the three main presentations that we have. I did have the advantage of talking with the Northwestern today, and they asked several questions about the referendum. One of the questions they asked was, what is something that I would really like them to share with the community? And really what it is if everyone we've presented to, everyone without fail, has been very interested, and they learned things they did not know, and ultimately they came away at least indicating to us that they were very supportive, even when they weren't supportive going into the presentation. So what I would encourage people to do is learn all you can so you can make an informed choice. There's a great deal of information on the district website that is evolving. The presentation I'm talking about, it's 18 minutes long, but it's right there, and you can watch it for yourself. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of frequently asked questions there. There's an opportunity for people to call if you're so inclined and ask other questions. You can send an email. Either way, we will get back to you. So the website is really sort of the catch-all for all things referendum for us. So that's what I would recommend. So that is where we're at with the referendum.
Dr. Gunlock, when will the mailer be available? Do we know yet?
We don't know yet, but it should be shortly. There's going to be, obviously, every time we've done, anytime any school district does a referendum, one of the responsibilities of the school district is to get the information out, and often they do that with one or more mailings. So we're working on that right now. Any questions?
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you.
Dr. Gunlock.
And for our next district administrator supplemental report, this is related to COVID-19 update. Typically, Mr. Kamer would be providing this information to you. However, we have some additional information that we do need to share out to our community that was not written in the staff report, because we've had a lot of action and activity that have occurred since that point in time. So we want to ensure that we are providing timely information to our community. So with that, I'm going to provide an update, if that's okay with everybody. We are very, very fortunate to have weekly updates for all of the superintendents within the Fox Valley region. It includes all of the health departments as well as medical doctors. Last week, we were advised that the positivity rate that was being seen was inflated, and that was due to a lack of testing, and only symptomatic people were being tested at that point. During our update today, we were informed that the positivity rates being reported are accurate, since we have testing available now for both symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. Typically, being able to test both symptomatic and asymptomatic, and previously having only symptomatic, that should have dropped the positivity rate. However, we are seeing a significant increase in this rate. This would represent that the infection rate in the community is going faster than testing can occur. And there is, not COVID, that there is uncontrolled community spread at this point. Within Winnebago County, the city of Oshkosh is at a critical burden level. Yesterday, the district had to make a very difficult decision to transition into Model 4 virtual learning. And that starts tomorrow. As we've been communicating regularly, we formally update our learning model matrix every 2 weeks on a Thursday, but we also monitor our data on a daily basis. Daily monitoring includes the number of new positive cases within Winnebago County, our ability to have staff coverage when they are not able to come to work, and the amount of individuals having to be quarantined or isolated due to testing positive for COVID-19 or being a close contact. Between Friday of last week and Monday of this week, there was a 137% increase in the number of people having to quarantine or isolate within the Oshkosh Area School District. We are a large organization, but as of today, we have 710 students or staff members who are currently quarantined or isolated. We've communicated in the past that we have a shortage of substitute teachers and have been very creative over the summer and the fall in order to try to recruit individuals and to train them in order to add to our substitute teacher pool. When teachers are not available to come to school to teach, and when substitutes are not available, we're being extremely creative. We're having teachers cover that vacant slot during their planning periods. We're pulling our instructional support teachers who typically provide support for teachers as well as direct support for students and put them into the classroom as well. Our deans, our assistant principals, our administrators, we're all helping. We're all going into the classrooms and trying to fill where we don't have a teacher available or a substitute available. We are really taking an all hands on deck approach, but we are not able to cover every teacher absence due to how many and how quickly more individuals are having to quarantine or isolate. This is occurring throughout the entire district and isn't school or school level specific. I have given our community, our staff, our parents, our students, and this board the assertion that we are committed to providing as much face-to-face instruction as possible in a safe manner. Despite these efforts and all the efforts we have made in our schools to socially distance, wash hands and sanitize, thoroughly clean our buildings each evening, and wear our face coverings, the numbers have continued to rise due to the amount of community spread occurring in Oshkosh. After examining all of these data points and working with the Winnebago County Health Department to review the impact on and the safety of our students, staff, and community, we arrived at the very difficult decision to switch to all virtual learning starting on Thursday, September 24th. It simply was impossible to assert that we could provide a safe in-person environment much longer given the trajectory that we are on. Currently, our region in the state has one of the fastest growing number of COVID cases in the country. In Oshkosh, we are often blessed to be featured in positive national news and rankings. Today at noon, the Oshkosh Neenah community had 2 rankings in the New York Times, but they are rankings that we need to be highly concerned about. The Times took into account the size of the cities so that they could provide an apples-to-apples comparison when they developed their ranking system. We ranked number 8 in the country for the average daily cases over the last 2 weeks. And again, when looking across the entire country, all the cities across the entire country, we ranked number 1 in the amount of new cases rising the fastest. I know how hard it is for many of our families and our businesses for us to be in a virtual learning mode district-wide. I really, really want for our students to be here in person, but it simply isn't safe to do it right now. We need to prioritize keeping everyone safe, and the current conditions are not favorable as we approach a potential tipping point in our community's fight against COVID-19. However, as a community, we can change the rate of transmission and defeat this virus. We can do this if we practice all of the recommended safety measures. Wear a face mask over your nose and mouth. Wash your hands or use hand sanitizer frequently. Practice social distancing. Avoid large gatherings. And if you're sick, stay home. By working together and making these incredibly small sacrifices, we can make a difference. We can make it possible for our children to return to our schools and receive the in-person educational experience they so desperately deserve. And that is our update related to COVID-19.
Thank you.
Any
Dr.
questions?
Thank you for that comprehensive overview. Very important information.
Thank you, Dr. Herzog. At this time, over to you.
All right, we have some board committee reports to share this evening. I know Mrs. Szilagyi has indicated she has a report. And since Education Committee alphabetically comes first, I guess we'll start with you tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you for letting me give this virtually. You can all hear me well?
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. So we met on Thursday, September 10th. The first thing we talked about was the beginning of the school year and how the elementary students in particular were very enthusiastic, even though it certainly looks different than years in the past with all the safety measures in place. We focused a lot on our teachers and how we know they've been working long and hard on new ways of teaching students using a variety of resources. We highlighted our math curriculum. We learned about a new thing called the Math Learning Center. Well, I guess it's not new for that. It's a nonprofit organization run by teachers for teachers, and they've created many helpful tools for teachers, providing options for at-home and in-person learning. So the way it works is the district's adopted curriculum, which is Bridges Math, is supported by the Math Learning Center. And it's very well designed to support teachers while keeping children actively engaged and supported as well. We talked about how teachers are going above and beyond and probably feel a lot like brand new teachers this year with all the new things that they are having to do. The balancing act of preparing for in-school lessons and then also making sure the students who are at home are engaged and have meaningful work. The district's encouraging teaming of teachers for the recordings that are going home to the elementary students. And so one silver lining, or good thing I guess you could say, is that this situation is encouraging a lot more collaboration amongst teachers, and it's also empowering teachers to build their knowledge and confidence in using technology. We talked about the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club have developed learning hours in their daily routines with the families that they service. And then we talked about teaching and learning at the secondary level and how that looks different from the elementary level. This summer, teachers were trained for 4 to 5 hours on campus and how to use this teaching model. So their students generally have a better capacity to work independently. Secondary education is more asynchronous than elementary. We also talked about the attention span for virtual learning is typically 10 to 15 minutes just because it's online learning screen time. Sorry, I looked at the results. Talking talked about teachers must still plan for what can be done individually versus what needs to be taught as a lesson, as direct instruction. And one concern that we addressed is that teachers will need to adjust so that they can cover all of the school year's curriculum, even if they're only seeing their students for half of the time. And now, as we know, we're going into Model 4 and working with them while they are at home. The second part of our meeting was the Arts Corps update on the grant. The district's in the second year of the grant. It runs on a calendar year versus a school year. And this year they got really creative to use the grant to support families during COVID. So $10,000 of the grant was allocated to keep the meal programs supplying families with food over the summer months. One thing we talked about with this grant is that the way it's written, the metrics used for the grant are about the teachers and the adults, so that they can support students by working with teachers. So there's a lot of teacher mentoring that happens as a result of this grant as well. And then we set our next meeting. We adjusted it to October 8th at 8:30 in the morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Szilagyi. Moving on then, facilities and finance, is there a report? We're going alphabetically tonight.
Thank you. I like the system. Very logical. Okay, so we met on the 17th, last Thursday. First thing that we talked about was the tennis court replacement at West. Brad Jadarski, he updated us on the status of that. He had already asked us for it because we have cracks and holes. It's been patched several times. It's just, we're running out of life on those courts. They have to be redone. We're looking at between $500,000 to $750,000 to redo them. The committee did approve moving forward with the plans to replace the courts. The preliminary work will be done in the fall, and bidding will take place in January. The replacement process is projected to be started in May of next year and then completed in August in time for the fall season. Let's see. And then Brad Jadarski and Craig Leader also discussed lighting for the courts with the committee. They would like to have those be funded through fundraising. And some of those costs could actually come from our Fund 80. And Lourdes has also been using these courts and is interested in partnering with the district to fundraise for the lights. The second item was the maintenance cost timeline of athletic facilities. This is something that we had requested of Brad and Craig to come up with, as well as Jim Fox, with maintenance for athletic and music needs at each school. Let's see, recommendations, so they now have a document. Recommendations were made for immediate, intermediate, and long-term for the next 3, 5, and 10 years. There's no financial or money amounts put on there just yet. The document will be an important piece for transparency purposes for the community. Drew Nehans would also like to present updated information to the board annually to show what's been accomplished and what's coming up in the short and the long term. Funding for these needs are going to come from Fund 46. If you guys remember, we've been putting money in that fund, and we finally get to use it, so that's exciting. The estimated cost will be between $500,000 to $1 million annually. This year, we're going to go ahead and set aside $500,000 for capital items, and that amount has been approved by the committee. And then about 5 years ago, Jim Fox presented a 10-year detailed facilities plan to the board. And then we had the Bray audit or assessment done. And so what Jim has done is he's rebuilt the entire thing using Bray's information. So now it's all in one place. This will help principals be able to see information, and the outcome should assist in being a good communication tool with the staff. He pulls about $1.5 million for capital improvements each year for the maintenance budget. The entire maintenance budget is, it's basically roofing and parking lots. So that's where a majority of that money goes. For example, this year, $1.3 million went to roofing, and that was more than what we had budgeted. So the data in this sheet allows Jim to have some certainty of where the dollar amount should be utilized each year. Then the third item was Fund 46. Now that we have the money, we can use the money. We've got to formulate a plan. And the DPI doesn't really care what we do. They just need to know what our plan is, and then they're going to audit us based on what we say we're going to do. Then we discussed the budget variance, and Drew Nehans would like to start using Forecast 5 Analytics, which has a Forecast 5 Plus report, which is, I'm sure, very exciting if you're an accountant. And that would be able to utilize district Skyward data and build the budget variance from that data. The nice thing about this program is that it takes 5 years of history per line item and then looks at trends. And so it just helps us budget more effectively. We're more accurate. It's easier to understand, provides more accuracy, and is a better predictor. Then we talked about teacher sub-pay. Drew, in the spring of 2020, we all approved the new substitute teacher pay rate, and that we were going to pay differently depending on buildings. And so he went ahead and he looked at all of that, and he said the problem that he's having is that the new rate system does not automate with the payroll system, because a payroll system cannot differentiate between schools. So it's a logistical issue. So his solution is to create a stipend instead, and that will work with our payroll system. The other thing then that we also looked at is the committee is recommending to the board tonight to approve the new stipend model that Drew has come up with, to change the retiree sub rate of pay because they were not being paid. They were not, what's the right word? Recognized for their value to the district. And we would be retroactively paying subs at the beginning of this school year. So we would be able to make all of that right for this school year. Let's see. And then the last thing that we discussed was student parking fees. There was a request made at the September 9th school board meeting to consider refunding parking fees from last year due to COVID. And Drew looked into that. We're talking about 9 weeks that the students were not attending school. After analysis of the situation, the costs, and determining the costs that would be incurred, let's see, it would take research parking fees for each family, the refund, and then refund families about 42 cents per day, and edit audit reports for last year that have already been completed and submitted. It was determined that this is not feasible and we will not be refunding for last year's parking. Instead, families have been provided this year's parking fees at no cost. And then the committee did say that we would like to discuss the $75 fee to determine if that's still appropriate for next school year. Future meeting agenda items are the wellness program for the district, as well as looking at becoming self-funded for our health insurance. And our next meeting is on October 15th at 8:30 in the morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Garner.
Mhm.
And then moving on to Policy and Governance Committee.
There's an Alan here, too.
I'm sorry?
There's an
Legislation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't,
I'll wait.
I wasn't thinking that you had had a recent meeting, so I apologize. Mr. Evans, let's hear from the Legislative Committee first. with all
I
due
will be
respect.
brief. Mainly because this meeting, the Legislative Committee's meeting took place on August 27th. We're going to have another one tomorrow. So this is kind of older information. But we usually start off our meetings with a legislative update. And some of the high points of that is we now have 3 people running for this job as state superintendent. The Joint Finance Committee doomsday look at the fall off of taxes is not as bad as they were anticipating. Revenues are down, but they are bouncing back much faster than they had thought. As far as local elections, all 3 of our incumbents, being on the local level, of our senator and our assembly people, have people running against them either as a opposing party or as an independent. Dr. Cartwright spoke about a bill that is being proposed by Senator Chris Kapinga that would provide parents with additional flexibility to address the COVID-19 pandemic, making it easier for them to enroll in different districts if they so chose. She also spoke about the school administrator line support of a number of topics, 9 different topics dealing with schools. And our next meeting on the agenda is going to be after this board does a workshop on this committee. We will be discussing that at our next meeting, which is going to be October 22nd, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, and I apologize for omitting legislative in the alphabetical listing. I think now we're ready for policy and governance.
Policy and Governance met last Friday on the 18th at 10:15 in the morning. All of the agenda items that we discussed are on the board tonight for approval. All of them except for one on there tonight are all technical updates. None of them was a content change. They were all punctuation or name changes or date changes, and then our own punctuation and capitalization changes. The one new policy, as you can see, is 2266. It's the non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education programs and activities. This is a new policy. It's provided for the purpose of implementing the Title IX regulations from Department of Education. The regulations provide detailed requirements concerning Title IX protections and detailed provisions for identifying, reporting, investigating, and making determinations of responsibilities for the acts of sexual discrimination and harassment, which school districts must follow when responding to these incidences. Due to the unique nature of the regulatory structure, the policy is drafted as a standalone policy, applicable only to the Title IX governed complaints and investigations. It has been intentionally kept separate from existing school district policies regarding other forms of discrimination, harassment, or bullying, as well as separate from Policy 5517, Student Anti-Harassment, which shall continue to apply to claims reviewed under state law. The new Title IX regulations require significantly more comprehensive and specific method of responsive reports of sexual discrimination and harassment than is required for other forms of discrimination and harassment. So that was, Dr. Pinkston had brought that to us and we went over that one. Then we did speak, all of you had asked for this to put in your folder. It is a letter to all of us, well, to Dr. Cartwright, but to the board also from Neola. On September 12th, they sent us an apology letter for not processing some of our specific style changes and some of our recent policies that we sent in for publishing. They had missed some of the capitalization and punctuation. They offered us a credit for having to re-enter the capitalization punctuation and also providing the district with an option. So this is something we've been asking for and we've been discussing. And we have an overwhelming majority of their clients do not do the kind of policy work that we do in our committee. And so but there are other clients of theirs that do some. So they want to use our district as a beta test for self-publishing policy changes. So that means, and you can read it through here, they want to, when we approve our committee, when we approve our policies, Sherry would have the option then to immediately upload them because we've already made them. I would, and what the committee discussed was being comfortable doing that with technical updates. Any content changes we'd want to send back for them for their lawyers to look through and to make sure that we're following. We have the right state statutes in there, we have the right laws in there, we have the right content in there, that we didn't change any, so that the public knows when these policies come, we have the policy and then Neola sends us the suggested policy and we compare the two and then we write the policy. Then we send it back and then they have their lawyers, which is provided in our contract with them, that they check over all of our policies to make sure that we are in compliance with all laws. So any content change, we would still do that. But any of these technical updates that we do, then Sherry would be able to upload them, which would save us a lot of work with, and that lag time of Neola not being able to get them up for a month or a couple weeks at a time. So if you guys want to read through that on your leisure, that would be fine. Some more reading from Neola.
Mm-hmm.
The future meeting agenda items are The next meeting, we have changed it. We are having it on Friday, October 16th at 9:30 a.m. And we're talking about environmental health and safety programs with Mr. Fox. And then any updates that Neil is sending our way.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Olmsted. Moving on, then, we have the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Is there anyone, any board member that is, who would like to pull any of the resolutions off of this list? Okay. Then the board will consider approval of 1, minutes of August 26, 2020 regular board meeting. 2, minutes of August 26, 2020 executive session of regular board meeting. Number 3, minutes of September 9, 2020 regular board meeting. Number 4, bills payable. Number 5, personnel, A, appointments and salaries. Number 6, approve 1.0 FTE middle school E-Academy student coach. Number 7, increased substitute teacher pay schedule. Number 8, Neola policies updates. A, 0142.1 electoral process. B, 01.42.4 oath. Letter C, 0155 committees. D, 0166 agenda. Number E, 0168.1 meeting minutes. F, 0173 independent financial auditor. G, 1619.03 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. H, 2131.01 Reading, Literacy, Instructional Goals and Assessment. I, 2260.01 Section 504 ADA Prohibition Against Discrimination Based on Disability. J, 2266 Non-Discrimination on the Basis of Sex in Education Programs or Activities. K, 2271.01 Start College Now program. L, 3120.01 Job Descriptions. M, 3121 Criminal History Record Check. N, 3122.01 Drug-Free Workplace. O, 3160 Physical Examination. P, 3419.03 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Q, 3430 Leaves of Absence. R, 4120.01 Job Descriptions. S, 4122.01 Drug-Free Workplace. T, 4160 Physical Examination. U, 4161 Unrequested Leaves of Absence, Fitness for Duty. V, 4210 Support Staff Ethics. W, 4340 Grievance Procedure. X, 4419.03 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Y, 4531 Unauthorized Work Stoppage. Z, 5451.02 Technical Excellence Higher Education Scholarships. AA, 7540.03 Student Technology Acceptable Use and Safety. BB, 7540.04 Staff Technology Acceptable Use and Safety. And CC, 8410 Crisis Intervention.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Carlin. Aye. Evans.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. So we have no resolution that was pulled off, so we don't have any individually considered resolutions tonight. Do we have any requests from the board for future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is announcements. Does anyone have an announcement this evening?
Dr. Herzog, I do have clarification.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to advise everybody that the mailer was dropped off at the post office yesterday for the referendum information that we're distributing. So it should be showing up in every household within the Oshkosh Area School District boundaries here in the next few days. So I just wanted to provide you with some additional information.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. Are there any other announcements? All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Harlan. Aye. Evans.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Olmsted.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Solaji.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all very much. We'll be back in 2 weeks.